Hi everyone, my name is Marko. I work with Marakana. I'm also a certified Scrum Master and as of recently a certified product owner. So I wanted to, first of all, I wanted to find out how many of you do Scrum right now? Okay, how many of you are certified? That should be a smaller number. Okay, got it. Okay, cool. Well, thanks to our sponsors, there's a couple of giveaways that are going to cover you in terms of certification, so highly recommend it. I also started SF Agile with Sasha a couple of years ago with the idea of basically doing this community gathering and helping share ideas and have presentations and so forth. So we're actively looking for people who want to present and share their thoughts on Scrum, Agile in general, and so forth. Cool. So let's start with the short presentation about Scrum. So this is what I learned in school. This is what they taught me when I took computer science. They said this is how you do software development. Basically, you start with your requirements, you do your design, you create your implementation, somebody does the verification, finally there's the maintenance process. So it's very simple, very straightforward, waterfall approach. The benefit of it is that people get it. Everyone gets it. It's something that fits in a slide. And that's where the methodology of software development mostly ends when you take the formal computer science education for the most part. The problem is humans. The problem is that we involve people in the process. And often we get changes as we keep on doing our development. So while this works, if your requirements are written in stone, it doesn't account for changes quite well. So that's basically one of the big problems here. And then we're going to look at how we affect this. So this is a slide that kind of shows a predictable ideal world in which we start with a plan and all the requirements. So everything is known. And we do our, we go into our little programming cave and we work on our program and we come out and all the requirements are there. So it's pretty simple. It's a straight line shot. Everyone gets it. As I said, the problem is the changes. The problem is that the requirements change. There's always new input. Market conditions are unpredictable. We just live in a chaotic world. And we just have to acknowledge that and basically figure out how to deal with that. So Scrum represents a different sort of approach. It's more like sailing, sort of. You kind of, you have an idea where you're going, and you take your course, and then the wind changes, and you adjust your course. The wind changes again, and you adjust your course. And eventually, you meet your goal. You get to where you wanted to go in the first place. So that's the idea behind Scrum. It takes into account people, changes, the environment, the chaos that exists out there. So this is a study that was done in Sweden, I believe. I borrowed the slide from Jens, one of our instructors, and basically talks about the result of typical waterfall approach. So typical waterfall approach is going to give us all the requirements, right? So it's very successful at doing that. The problem is that most of those features that we end up with are not very useful. So as you can see, only about 20% of features are used at most times. So everything else is basically waste. So one thing that we're trying to address with Scrum is account for that waste and basically minimize it, eliminate it altogether. How many of you are familiar with the manifesto? Okay. So a bunch of very smart people went on top of the mountain and basically sat there for a couple of days and shared their experiences, their knowledge, and they came down with this manifesto. And basically, it's very straightforward. It says, we're going to value individuals over interactions, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So it's all about the people, right? We're going to value working software over comprehensive documentation. Right? So where the focus of the waterfall was more on documenting your processes, ISO 9000, whatever. The goal of Agile and Scrum is to really get you a working product that people love and use on a day-to-day basis. Customers and collaboration over contract negotiations, and then responding to changes over following the plan. Now, while this says we're going to do X over Y, it doesn't mean we're not going to do Y. It just means that we value Y less than we value X, right? So that's the idea behind it. So Agile is something that's relatively recent in terms of software engineering, but it has roots in Toyota manufacturing process that was developed by Toyota back in the day, and it basically it was developed to eliminate waste in the production of cars, right? So that's where the Toyota process came about, and it was basically made popular by Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland in an article that they did for Harvard Business Review in the late 80s, early 90s. And that's kind of how Scrum evolved as Scrum, as opposed to just an Agile concept. So let's just talk briefly about what Scrum is and what it isn't. So Scrum is lean and agile, but it's not undisciplined. It may often appear that it's all chaotic, that we don't know what we're doing, a bunch of people running around. But that's by design, so that's the idea. It's a product management, so we manage the product, but not the project. So that's a very important distinction. Scrum is easy to understand. You guys are going to get Scrum by the end of the day, so that's not an issue. The issue is that it's really hard to implement. There's a lot of reasons why Scrum implementations are relatively hard, and that's part of our next presentation. Hopefully, it's going to show a case study on that. Scrum is very human-focused as opposed to process-driven, so it's about people, not about processes. Value-focused as opposed to productivity-focused. So we don't really care how many lines of code you write per unit of time or how many features you crank out per unit of time. What we really care about is that what comes out at the end of the day is something that is useful. People actually like those features and use them. So that's the focus. It's about learning. There's a Japanese term called Kaizen, which means continual improvement. So you're constantly learning from your past experiences and just getting better. It's evolutionary versus revolutionary, right? It's kind of, you're getting slightly better every single time. It's not about a final goal. It's not about reaching that, completing all the features. It's really about learning how to improve. And it's about people versus tools. So that's an important thing too. So this is a diagram that I'm pretty sure most of you have seen before. So this is Scrum. This is basically, tells you everything right here. So basically, we start with the product backlog, which is all the things that we could potentially get done. We pick what we are going to work on for a specific time frame. So that's going to be our boxed amount of time. And then we do what's called a sprint. So we run through a sprint, which is usually 2 to 4 weeks. And eventually, we have a working piece of software. So it doesn't have to be software. It could be any product. But we have a working, potentially shippable product. It's whole and complete, whatever whole and complete means in your world. So that's Scrum in a picture. So we're going to walk through a couple of major breakdowns of Scrum. So there are basically 3 things, and each one has 3 things in them. So we have 3 sets of roles, which are product owner, Scrum Master, and the team. These are kind of like the major ones. We have 3 meetings, 3 types of meetings. So sprint planning, daily Scrum, and sprint review. And then we have 3 lists, things you post on a Post-it notes and stick on your whiteboard. We have the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and impediment list. So that's essentially what we have. I'm going to walk through the roles. So the product owner is the person that's responsible for the product. That's the person. Thank you. Can you guys hear it better? Oh, wow. Okay. Woohoo. So the product owner is the person that's responsible for the vision of the product. So that's the guy or a gal that has an idea what we want to ship, right? The product owner is responsible for features and ultimately has the profit and loss responsibility. So product owner's job is to bring ROI, right, on the whole project. The team is the key to Scrum, right? So the team is self-organizing. It's basically, anywhere between 2 to 10 people, that sort of neighborhood. And it's cross-disciplinary. So people come from different functions. They understand if it's a software, you have a database guy, and you have a UI guy, and you have the front end and the back end guy and the QA guy all mixed together. So it's very cross-functional. And this term, true pigs, that comes from, how many of you are familiar with the ham and egg story? A couple of you. So it's the difference between commitment versus involvement. So in a ham and egg sandwich, if you will, the pig is committed and the chicken is involved. Does that make sense? Okay. So the team is highly committed, right? It's the ham in the sandwich, so there's no going back. And finally, we have the Scrum Master. So Scrum Master is the person that is there not to be a master, but more to serve the team. So the job of the Scrum Master is really to serve the team, to make sure that the team has everything the team needs to get the job done, right? It removes all the impediments, enforces the Scrum process, and basically is just there to help. So it's very much a servant, not a master, as the name suggests. All right, so let's look at the meetings. So we have 3 meetings: the sprint planning meeting, the daily Scrum, and the Scrum review. So the sprint planning meeting is the first meeting. That's basically what the team gets together with the product owner, figures out what is that we want to work on, what are the costs of various features, how important various features are. And basically analyze them. Initial part of the planning meeting is done with the product owner. Afterwards, basically the team goes on and figures out the cost and all the other details involved in creating the sprint backlog. The result of the sprint planning meeting is the team commits. So the team is going to commit on certain items that are going to be completed by the end of the sprint. So that's the goal. Daily Scrum is basically a stand-up meeting. So essentially, it's something that you do in a couple of minute conversation over the water cooler, and essentially covers 3 things: what did you get done yesterday? What will you do today? And what are some issues that are stopping you from getting your job done? Essentially, so it's a stand-up meeting within the team, so team completes it. And finally, we have the sprint review that happens at the end of the sprint, so at the end of that 2 to 4 week process. And the idea is to basically present the results to the product owner, show them a potentially shippable product, so something that's whole and complete, may never be actually shipped, but it's shippable. That's the point, and it's done at the end of the sprint, basically. And these are the lists. So we have the product backlog. This is the list of all the possible things that you could develop, all the features. So it's your wish list, right? It's ordered and estimated, meaning that the team has sat down and figured out how important certain things are and how long it's going to take to do certain things. And it doesn't have to be perfectly ordered and estimated. Certain things are going to bubble up as they become more important. Everyone can contribute, so it's very much a collaboration tool, and fosters communication. So it's very important that it's exposed to the entire team so that everyone can basically contribute to it. The sprint backlog is a smaller version of that list, sort of. It's basically whatever the team committed to for the given sprint. It shows what we're working on as a team and what's left to be done and so forth. So that's essentially a specific to a sprint. And then finally, there's an impediment list that's maintained by the Scrum Master. So it's the job of the Scrum Master to maintain this list, figure out what are all the issues that are stopping the team from just being really, really rocking, and basically figure out how to help the team with all those things. So this is finally, I just included a couple examples of this list, so you guys have an idea for those of you who have never seen them. So it's basically a very simple, you have a set of stories or product backlog items, as they're known, and you pick the ones that you're going to work on in the sprint, and there's certain ones that are in process, so meaning we're working on them, and there's certain ones that are done. So that's basically a very high-level overview of the backlog. This is something called the Burndown Chart. I just kind of wanted to give you a feel for it. So basically, it represents a specific sprint. So it shows you, in this example, we have 21-day sprint. And at the beginning of the day, we have all the resources, meaning all the hours and time that is available to us as a team to work on this. And then we have certain features or PBIs, as they're known, product backlog items that we are knocking off. And each one has a certain value, so we can basically estimate how we're burning down through the list of things that need to be done. As you can see, it's not a perfect line in most cases, and that's where the team learns and figures out what works, what doesn't. So, this is just an important thing to keep in mind, and that Scrum is a very lightweight framework for helping you run your projects more effectively. But it's not a silver bullet. So although it's very simple, it's very, very complicated to implement. And there are a lot of things to consider when you actually start implementing Scrum. So I hope that our next presentation actually shows some of the real world experiences going into Scrum full force. And the point again of Scrum is are happier people, right? So the Waterfall approach gives us a very rigid process of doing things, and we may get surprises along the way. While the Scrum approach or Agile approach does seem a little bit more chaotic in a way, but it's really, the point is to help us deal with changes and things that just come at us as we keep on going. And ultimately, we're going to have a better product and happier teams, and that's the goal, I hope. So that's basically my presentation. Thank you.